rather a community advocate. I've lived an extraordinary life, including 20 years in Hawaii, where I owned a successful entertainment agency and content promotion company. But now I'm just what I call an ordinary citizen. And I'm very grateful to be here today with everyone to share, because part of what I hope happens today is that you will get some inspiration and motivation from what I say, so that when you folks go out and do what I hope that I've done, you will have what it takes to get the job done. Before I go any further, I'd like my young, beautiful wife, Emily, if she would just take a stand and raise her hand, please. Okay, I point her out because part of what I do.
You tricked us.
In order to allow me to be here, would not have been able without the support of a good wife.
That's nice.
The Bible is right. The second thing I'd like to say is I am not a minister, but I am also a child of God and therefore a soldier of God. And if you take nothing else from me today, I'd like you to Google something called Soldier of God. It reads, I'm a soldier of God, and God is my commander-in-chief. And I share that because that is the spirit that I take with me when I do this advocacy work, because I'm sure everyone in here has an Emma, whether it's your husband, your wife, your mother, your father, someone that you love. When you start advocating for these issues, hold that person in your heart, because when you're working for someone else, that's the best that you can do as a human being. The second thing I will do today is share with you a little bit about what you heard, to make you realize this is not out in the world, it is right in our backyard. Water is one of my main concerns, and a lot of us turn on the faucet thinking the water is okay, but as you will see from this little video clip and some of the information I'm sharing, I think all of us should have some concerns about the quality of our water, because it's critical to keep our bodies healthy. So let's first watch this video.
County town of Lucama boiled over late last year.
You almost feel like you're living in a third world country. I mean, you shouldn't have to go to a faucet, and you don't know from this time to the next time whether you're going to get brown water or chemical water.
For years, iron and manganese turned water brown, but it wasn't in violation. However, the small town's been hit with 5 violations since October for failing to test for much more dangerous contaminants. Lucama's problems prompted us to look at similar systems across the state, and we found far more violators. Let's start with North Carolina's giant infrastructure gap, an estimated $17 to $26 billion in needed water and sewer upgrades. Much of that is small rural systems. Yet the state fund designed to deal with that is just $30 million. Truly a drop in the bucket.
And that is an expectation of citizens, is that they have clean water to drink and the safe disposal of waste.
But a WRAL investigation shows the state's small rural public water systems tend to have the biggest problems. The most common issues involve TTHM and haloacetic acids, 2 cancer-causing byproducts of the disinfection process. In some cases, there's also E. coli, coliform, even radium.
There's no confidence in the water. Water is critical.
We analyzed dozens of water systems through the state's Drinking Water Watch program and found some systems with hundreds of violations over the past few decades. WRAL Investigates compiled violation points using the EPA scoring system over the past 5 years. Dominating the top violators, rural systems. On the top 20 list locally, Carthage, Scotland Neck, South Granville, Enfield, Princeton, Halifax, Henderson-Carr Lake, and Kenley.
It's no surprise to anyone that's been up here. Now, this is an issue that has been long-standing.
Stacks of bottled water greet you in John Mayo's Butler home. He and retired biologist Frank McKay are outspoken customers and critics of the South Granville Water and Sewer Authority. Will you drink this water?
Absolutely not.
No, I do not. Seguasa's system dates back to World War II, with years of complaints about bad smelling, bad tasting, and at times discolored water.
As it deteriorates, my opinion is they cannot keep up with the deterioration right now. It's too far gone.
The authority is also burdened by debt, largely because of expensive sewer upgrades required by runoff restrictions into Falls Lake.
So I can't see them really coming up with a solution because of the debt, because of the age of the system, and the lack of expertise.
How big a concern are rural water systems in North Carolina?
Well, it's a huge concern.
Patrick Woody, who leads the North Carolina Rural Center, says improving drinking water is made harder when systems don't have enough customers to spread the cost for upgrades.
Rural small systems, it's all about economies of scale.
The town of Carthage in Moore County tops the violator list with years of contaminant violations.
When I came here, we'd been under special order consent for 12 years, failing to meet water quality standards.
Turnarounds are possible, though. Carthage Town Manager Tom Robinson used that bad track record to leverage federal funding for a new pretreatment facility. Improved water also came with a big cost to customers.
Our water and sewer rates, that's the one thing that bothers me, it's so high. But we had to do it to solve the problems that we're in.
What do you say to those frustrated customers in these small communities?
I think we do have to, in some cases, take a new approach.
Kim Colson oversees water infrastructure for the Department of Environmental Quality.
Anywhere you see a red dot is a facility that's not generating enough revenue to cover their expenses.
That's a lot of red, especially when you consider the unmet needs. How do you get over that hump?
Well, I think a big part of that is making better decisions at the local level.
That includes new ways to spread cost and expertise.
One of the ways we do that is by sharing management of the infrastructure, by interconnecting it, by going to regional systems.
But after years of big water problems in small towns, perhaps the most serious challenge is winning back trust.
Small rural communities, I think they're grunt.
This is an aerial.
And I'm from the South Granville area that's in this report. And the reason we don't drink the water there is because 3 years ago, the North Carolina Cancer Registry issued its annual report, and it found that the 3 zip codes in South Granville had the highest cancer rates in the state. And water is the one thing that we all share. The South Granville Water Authority that manages our water system had in 13 years 27 violations. Each of those violations means consumers are likely ingesting contaminants. The EPA regulates contaminants, but there are hundreds of them, and they have a primary and a secondary list. What's okay today may not be okay tomorrow, which is why I began the crusade that I did. We're now paying about 2 people $150 a month for water that we don't cook with or drink. The federal prison there figured out a way to lower their water consumption, which threw the brunt on the customers. That means our rates will continue to go up, but the quality will not. And don't think because you're in a larger city, you might be absent from this, because the nation's infrastructure is old. You don't hear any politicians talking about it because it would take literally trillions of dollars. So to me, it's almost state-sponsored genocide to know people are ingesting bad water that's contaminated and no one does anything about it. Now, I mentioned the God part in the beginning because I think he gave me the mission to try and address this issue. When I began, I had no idea where to start. I'd never done this before, but I knew something needed to be done. We had 2 local newspapers, which I began to submit editorials to every week. Each week, I would highlight a problem or weakness in the system. Eventually, the PhD biologist that you saw read my material and he got in touch with me. We both began to do the same thing. I also urge you to get in touch with the media, because the media is very strong, as we've just seen with medieval terrorists. Those people would not have gotten the resolve they got if the media had not brought that to light. Same thing with Flint, Michigan. So when you start in your community, make sure you network with some reporters. Start locally. Once you get enough steam, you can bring in the national media. I would also, I don't know if you ever heard of an organization called the Agency for Toxic Substance and Disease Registry. It is the sister agency to the CDC in Atlanta, Georgia. Everyone's heard of the CDC, but not many people have heard of their sister company. That organization is there to provide assistance to communities who feel they may have something in their community that could be adverse to their health. The beautiful part is you do not have to be an official. It does not cost anything. You can be a citizen scientist and do some research, and if you find something that's disturbing or concerning in your community, you can write a letter to them and petition them to do some research, collect data, and come up with some information. In the case of South Granville, they came back with a response that the amount of manganese in our water was adequate to stain pipes, clothes, and adversely affect the quality of people using it. That is important because they also state that excess manganese will have neurological effects and learning disabilities in children. And our school system in Granville has been struggling for years. I strongly believe there is a correlation there, but because we are such a small community, it would take a very costly epidemiological study in order to prove that. But the second part of that, social media. You younger people are much more adept than that than I, but I did run across a website called Nextdoor. It is a site that allows individuals to communicate with neighbors in their community. So when you start making posts on these sites, you will soon find others have the same concerns as yourself, and your support will begin to broaden. Once that happens, then you'll have a little steam build up. And in our case, first of all, the schools brought in bottled water for the schools that were being serviced by Sawassa. The executive director, who had been there for 13 years, resigned and left because of the pressure that we put on him. And maybe the most significant, the last election we had, 3 incumbents who had been there for years were all voted out. So that is the way you get things done. If people are not listening to you, your vote is your most powerful weapon. Make sure they understand that they will be voted out. And when you get even one of them voted out, the others will take notice of that, and then you begin to see action. We also lobbied our state senator to give us some money for filters, because I firmly believe after spending the last 4 years looking into this matter, we all need to start thinking about installing reverse osmosis filters in our homes. A lot of people in Gulf Granville have already started to do this. A whole house system is ideal because many of these contaminants are more dangerous absorbed in the skin through showers or baths as they are ingested. But at the very least, get a system that will give you good water to cook and drink, and that way you will avoid a lot of the hazards. And in closing, I would just, I spent 20 years in the music business, and I always relate everything to songs. Well, back in the 70s, Harold Melvin and the Blue Note wrote a song called Wake Up Everybody. We've got to change the world, just you and me. That is exactly the spirit that you need to take. And one final statement, remember, the people who are just crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who usually do.